Well, hi there. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Daniel Donahey of American Business Culture, Training and Testing Services. I'm joined today by Sean Delaney, also of American Business Culture, Training and Testing Services. We're German-American business specialists, and we've been running a blog series in LinkedIn here for the last few weeks, which is probably why you're joining us today. And that blog series has been creating a lot of buzz and a lot of interest and some questions. People are quite curious about how Americans use email, and what we've decided to do is Sean's going to interview me, and we're going to see what comes out of this. We don't know either. We haven't rehearsed this yet. We're working from some slides, but we haven't rehearsed it yet. So we'll just see what comes out of it. I think you'll enjoy it, and I hope you do. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, please, let me give it over to Sean. Sean, could you say a few words, please?
Hey, thanks, Dan. Hey, everyone, I'm Sean Delaney, American Business Culture Trainer. As Dan said, we've been getting a lot of questions from our blog post, and we wanted to present this as kind of a conversation or interview to clear up some misunderstandings about American email strategy and weird habits. We want to help everyone understand why Americans handle email the way that we do.
Okay, all right. So let's get after it. Sean, you take it from here.
All right. So you often say that email is the perfect format for a supporting communication channel. Why should it not be used as the main channel?
Well, the reason why is email is not very good at doing two things, and those two things are the most important things in American business. One is creating alignment, and the other is being urgent. The truth of the matter is, in American business, the urgent things get done, and also only the things that are aligned get done. Now, email, unfortunately, is considered the least urgent form of communication available to anyone in American business. Everything else is more urgent. Everything, literally, text message, a phone call, an online meetings, drums, smoke signals, it doesn't matter. Everything's more urgent than an email, and you can't make it urgent. You can't make it urgent with a red exclamation point. You can't make it urgent by writing urgent in the subject line. It's a real handicap that you have with this form of communication. The other thing is that a long email won't be read. So it's absolutely impossible to deliver a complex message with an email. That means it's of practically no use, or at least extremely limited use, in affecting alignment.
Okay. So important issues should be discussed over the phone or in person.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no way around it.
And we get a lot of questions. Why can't we send 10 or more questions in one email? Why should we just send one question per email?
Well, 10 sentences, one question on one subject are kind of the limitations that were set on emails from the very beginning. You have to understand that now, for a young person, this seems like ancient history, but the truth of the matter is, somebody who's been around as long as I have, we haven't been using email all that long. We didn't use email before the mid 90s, late 90s in Germany, in fact. And back in those days, all American managers used BlackBerry telephones. And at that time, somebody got the bright idea that an email should fit into the screen of a BlackBerry, which was coincidentally 10 sentences. Now, so that gives you the 10 sentence limit. Asking more than one question is really a form of alignment, and email's not acceptable for alignment, so they're not going to entertain more than one question with it. And again, because it's not acceptable for alignment, you can't really, within 10 sentences, talk about more than one subject. Now, the other thing is, if you ask an American more than one question in an email, pardon me, you'll find that the American will answer one and ignore the second one. If you ask three questions, the American will probably answer one and ignore two. However, if you ask four questions, it's unlikely you'll get an answer to the email because it got too long, too complex, and ended up put into pending. By the way, in German, pending means wird noch bearbeitet. So we'll get to it. But what it really means, it's no longer urgent. Out of sight is out of mind. It won't be seen again. In American business, only the urgent things get done. That's a simple fact. Everything else has to wait. Pending isn't urgent, so the pending things will always have to wait.
So if you put too many questions, it's hard to decide which one is the most important. That's why it's very important to pick one question that you need answered.
That's right. Otherwise, what we'll probably do is answer the easiest one and ignore the others. Okay.
Well, another question we often get, because we advise our clients to put a nice polite greeting at the beginning of each email,
Right.
but sometimes our American counterparts don't do the same thing. Why don't Americans usually use these kind of greetings?
Well, again, this goes back to the old days of emails, using email, and you have to understand that before we used email, everything we did on paper. And back in those days, every business person had to learn to use different styles of what's the word, correspondence. And one form was the business letter. The business letter had a very strict etiquette. In other words, really in the earliest days, if you wrote to dear sir or madam, you had to close with yours faithfully. Or if you wrote to dear Mr., Mrs., Ms., or doctor, you would close with yours sincerely. And if only if you were using someone's first name did you really have a choice as to how you closed. You might use best wishes, best regards, or something along those lines. So the etiquette was really strict. The second form of communication you learned, which was actually much more common, was the memorandum or memo, as we called it. And the memo was an informal internal communication style used within companies. Now, the format of a memo, you'll recognize it probably. It was to, from, subject, date. If you think about how is an email constructed, from, to, subject, the date is stamped in. What I'm trying to say with that is that email was always intended to be a memo, which did not require a greeting or a complimentary close. It was just, again, to, from, subject, date, and the message. Now, the old time managers used to write in dear all or something like that before the memo went up on the wall or got put through the company internal post, but it wasn't required. It was something that people might have done or not done, but it wasn't required at all. So the problem you run into in international business or German American business specifically is that Americans treat email like a memo, and Germans and the rest of the world treat it like a letter. That's the problem. It's just a source of misunderstandings between us. Now, the other thing you have to really recognize that Americans, well, let me say this, Germans get too many emails. Everybody gets too many emails, but Americans really get too many emails. You take a average knowledge worker, someone who's reached maybe middle hierarchical levels in the corporation, they're getting 300-400 emails a day. There's just no time to deal with them in any kind of depth. It's not going to happen. So if you look at that, how much time that steals away from their schedule, and when you consider that the email isn't urgent, nor is it helpful or very helpful, at least in affecting alignment, anything you can do to save time. Oh, plus, don't let me forget this, Americans hate email communication. It's generally hated. There's hardly a communication form that could be more hated than email communication. You take all this together, and any strategy that can save time in dealing with email is very welcome on the American side. One of those strategies is not writing hi, hello, or dear. As simple as it sounds, that's really the truth of the matter.
Okay, so although we teach American communication style, this is an example of a habit that you should not copy from American communication.
Absolutely right. So that gets probably to the question you wanted to ask very specifically. Go ahead and shoot,
We often
Sean.
get
Go
asked,
after it.
we tell our clients to use these greetings, but what should we do if an American doesn't use the same greeting in their email?
All
Should we
right.
take
Very
offense
good.
to it?
Thank you. And I'll tell you, the thing is, ignore it. It has no meaning. It doesn't mean anything at all. They're not breaking any rules of etiquette, first of all. Second of all, it's certainly not intended to be rude to you or to communicate any kind of hidden message. There's none of that. But please don't let their poor communication habits, email habits specifically, lead you to lowering your own level of professionalism. That would be a mistake. The emails that we've been recommending, the email templates that we've been recommending in this blog series, they've been proven to work very, very well, but they're not identical to how most Americans write emails. They're better. And I suggest that you do it better because If you use continuously a professional email writing system yourself, what you're going to find, not every American, but many Americans will raise the level of their email writing to match yours. And that comes down to status, the reason why that works. So don't go down, go up.
And that's a great point. By using this strategy, you can, in the long term, really benefit your company.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you can.
And it's often hard to get Americans to respond right away. If I send a request, what should I do if they don't respond in one business day?
All right, very good. Well, here's the thing. If they don't respond within one day, they're probably not going to respond. Simple as that. So if you don't get a response by the next day, ask again the next day. This is also the reason why we suggest you yourself must respond within one day, because Americans will treat that the same way. They know if they don't get a response from you, there's probably nothing coming. Even though that's not true in Germany necessarily, that's what they think. In American business, no contact means that nothing's happening. It's that simple. And if you really do get a no response, in other words, you've written the email, nobody reacted to you within a day, you can send a template like this. This is part of the blog series. You've seen it, or you will see it at least. And that's very simple. Hi, Joe. Hopefully this email finds you well. I don't know if you saw my last email, but I was wondering if, just repeat the request for action. I would sincerely appreciate your help on this. Have a fantastic day. Regards. It's that simple, and that will make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that's a great way to reinforce urgency without making yourself the source of pressure. Which is
Absolutely.
you get. If I need information sent to me by Friday and I don't have a response still on Tuesday, should I send a follow up email or just wait?
Yeah, this is a question that comes up a lot. It's so you wrote an email on Monday and you asked for information to be sent on Friday. Well, you might wonder then, why would you expect a response by Tuesday? Well, it goes back to what I was saying before. If they don't acknowledge you by Tuesday, it's unlikely that they're going to send you the information by Friday. It is that simple. Now, an acknowledgement isn't necessarily a full answer. It's not the information you requested. It's as much as, really, I saw your email and I'm on it. You can expect it by Friday. But if you don't get that, you probably won't get anything. That's the simple fact. And as I said before on the slide before, no contact means that nothing's happening. So if nothing is happening, nothing's going to happen. That's generally true. And that if I were a betting man, that's the way I would bet. Never let the time run out when you work with Americans. Without time, all you have is pressure. And the way Americans react to pressure is by stepping on the brakes. By the way, let me add a piece of information in here. And it is this: contact frequency isn't pressure from the American side. I know Germans look at it as pressure, but Americans don't. Pressure comes from the formulation of the message. So all contact frequency is, it's a signal of the urgency, yes, and it's also an opportunity to align, but that's all it is. It's nothing else.
So you're better off sending a follow up email the next day asking for acknowledgement as opposed to waiting for Friday, not getting the info you need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question about that. That's totally true.
Now, these are a couple taboos here. What's wrong with using terms like ASAP or thank you in advance?
Well, what's wrong with them, first of all, is that, let's start with ASAP, ASAP. ASAP means officially as soon as possible, but it's not a proper deadline. And so it's not who exactly, what exactly, or when exactly, first of all. So it doesn't work as a proper deadline. It doesn't create any pressure. At the same time, it gets on people's nerves. ASAP's a term that actually comes from the military, and it's not really a proper term in civilian life. It's used among former military sometimes, especially in defense contracting companies and things like that, but it's not generally acceptable. So once again, it gets on people's nerves, but it doesn't create any urgency. That makes it the worst possible strategy of both worlds. It doesn't work. Now, thank you in advance, that's signaling or telling people that they don't have a choice. And Americans always demand voice and choice in anything that affects us directly. So you can't take away our power to choose. Now, what I'm suggesting is to use consistently a proper deadline, and that's put together like you see here. to ensure or to avoid a common goal. For example, to ensure on-time delivery or to avoid delivery issues. Please turn in the form or please take some appropriate action by this deadline. Now put a deadline with the deadline, always put in a buffer because they think there's a buffer in there anyway. And if there isn't, you create a problem. So put a buffer in there. 20% is kind of the usual size buffer. Use that. It can be more. That's not a problem. And then instead of writing thank you in advance, write, I would really appreciate your help on this.
Okay.
Now, Americans generally love to help, but hate being told what to do. So that's the way to put these two things together. Correct deadline. I would really appreciate your help on this.
So when you use ASAP or thank you in advance, people think that you're speaking down to them.
They do, very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. It's just, it's not appropriate. So let's put it this way, even if they're not sure, you might be speaking down to them. So it opens the door that you don't want to open. What's the point?
But it's a good tip there to present issues as a common problem, because then you get everybody on the same team working together.
Exactly, exactly, which is what the whole thing's always about.
Now, this is something that has always bugged me. It's not efficient. Why do Americans send long email chains CCing everyone?
Yeah, well, there's a few things that really happen. First of all, how Americans treat copies, and then email chains, and then distribution lists. There's vast differences between what's done in Germany and what's done in the U.S. So let's try to take that apart piece by piece. First of all, when you're writing to the American side, wherever you're writing from, you're writing to someone in the United States. If you put one person in copy, you've just lessened the accountability. So I'll guarantee you, putting one person in copy is going to lower the chances that anybody answers, as the accountability is no longer crystal clear. And if the accountability isn't clear, you've lowered the chances that anything's going to happen on the basis of this email, even if you believe it's clear. So the follow-up question is often, well, what if I write to this person and the other person is in copy? It doesn't matter. As soon as you use a copy, you've made it unlikely that anybody's going to reply to the email. Now, the next question logically is, wait a minute, almost every email that comes from the American side, 20 people are in copy, or it gets run through a distribution list. Well, that's right. You're not wrong about that. The reason is, if you copy anyone in America, you have to copy everyone. Because who gets copied is a question of status. It indicates status, and who gets copied or who doesn't get copied, you may be insulting someone. If you copied me but you don't copy Sean, well, that might be a problem for Sean. It very well could be. So either nobody or everybody, knowing that once everybody gets copied, nobody's going to do anything. You can be certain of that. In American business, copying and sending emails through a distribution list, that's part of a strategy we use. We call it the CYA strategy, which means cover your ass. And what that means is you want to make it look like you're doing something when you're not doing anything. That's a good way to do it. That's also the reason that Americans use these ridiculous email chains, where every idiot who doesn't have anything better to do writes a sentence in the email chain. The one thing you can know for sure, nobody's going to look at that. No action is going to happen based on it. These are worthless strategies, all of them. So break those bad habits, break those chains. Don't use copies. Don't use distribution lists. Don't use email chains. And as far as I'm concerned, you could ignore them from the other side if they do. And there's no risk in it, because if there's something that you shouldn't have ignored but you did, they'll write another email and ask you if you've seen that email. It's not a problem at all. The danger is wasting your time on something with no value.
I know I'm guilty of it. If I receive an email with 20 people CC'd, I'm not looking at it.
Same here.
Responsibility has been diffused.
Absolutely.
It's not urgent, and it's not good for alignment. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, it's the same here. It's the same. And most Americans are the same way. A lot of times people try to kid themselves that there's a transparency benefit on that. That transparency doesn't mean anything. All you're doing is letting people off the hook. So
it makes you look busy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's it.
Dan, do you have any additional tips that you can share with us today?
Well, yeah, I do. There are a few things that I've noted, and I think if you use these, you'll get definitely better results long-term with your email. First thing is, keep in mind what email can do and what it can't do. And first of all, what it can't do. If you're working on something big, something different, something new, if you're working on anything that requires a change or a lot of coordination, it has to be aligned in verbal dialogue sessions. There's no way of getting out of talking about it. You've got to talk about it. Email cannot take the place of verbal alignment. There's no way that it can. So don't even try. Writing those long summarized emails with a catalog of questions, they take hours sometimes. It's an absolute waste of your time. So save that time. It's not worth it. However, if you align verbally first, then you can use email to work through the resulting task lists. And the resulting task list, that's a very, very powerful working instrument for Americans. Keep this in mind. If you write minutes or protocols to summarize what happened in a meeting, nobody will read them. Nobody who was in the meeting anyway will read them. However, they'll look at a task list as being a very valuable tool because there's only 3 inputs in it. What's the task? Who's the responsible person? What's the due date? This is something that Americans really appreciate because it's economical with their time. If you need written confirmation on something that you've spoken about, I would suggest you write the summary yourself. If you wait till an American writes the summary, you may be waiting for a long, long time. Write it yourself and ask your American counterpart to confirm it. Now you've got the confirmation you need in writing, and it's under your control. Also, use other tools to augment your email communication. Text is good. Chatting is very good in America. Americans prefer to chat. It's more informal. It's like an online, like an ongoing dialogue. Use phone calls or whatever. But if you're not a person who likes to use a lot of phone calls, texting and chatting will help put more urgency into your email writing. So
Hey, that's a great point there. If somebody doesn't answer your follow-up email, it's best to just pick up the phone or walk down the hall and talk to them in person.
absolutely, I couldn't agree more with that.
You had
So that's
another
about
great point.
that's about all probably we have time to share today. But if you want to get a PDF of this presentation, just ask us. It's not hard to remember what our website is www.american-business-culture.com. That's an easy one. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
Well, I just think you made a really crystal clear point right there. People often complain that it's hard to get commitments from their American coworkers. But if you put those 3 inputs, responsible party, the task, and a due date, then there's no room for misunderstanding. So that's
Absolutely right. Thank you. I probably went too fast to the last page. I apologize if I did. So thank you guys very much. We appreciate your interest and look forward to seeing you the next time around. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.